one and all, and listen to tales of excitement and adventure. Tales of daring heroes, savage monsters, and bards who just couldn't keep it in their pants. Tales of friendship, nobility, drunken foolishness, and unforgettable fun. These are tales of role-playing games, fair listeners, and this is Rollin' Bones. My name is Ryan Howard, and I shall be your guide. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Rollin' Bones with Ryan Howard, your source for the best in RPG interviews. I am your host and king of the boneheads, Ryan Howard, and joining us this evening, we have a fantasy author and RPG YouTuber. You guys have no doubt seen his videos with his colorful cast of characters, including Dweebles and Mike and Jack the NPC. Ladies and gentlemen, give it up for Seth Skorkowsky.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on, and thanks for giving us your time this evening.
No problem at all.
Cool. So, Seth, we are going to start this off the same way we start every interview. I've got these questions that everyone gets asked when they step through the doors here on Rollin' Bones. So, let's begin at the beginning. How did you get into RPGs?
I was always interested in it. I think I grew up in East Texas during the Satanic Panic of the 80s. So I remember, I believed that Dungeons and Dragons had been made illegal. Like they outlawed it altogether. So when I was in some homeroom in middle school, they had that little magazine that they give out to kids in homeroom. Mm-hmm. And it had this full page, like, it's back. It had the Dungeons and Dragons basic box set that was being released. And I remember telling my friend, like, oh my God, it's no longer illegal. So I really wanted to know what it was all about. So for my 13th birthday, I got the D&D box set. And that ended up leading me to meeting my first dungeon master and going forward from there. So I can pretty easily ID the exact date that I got into role-playing games.
Gotcha. That's pretty sweet. I had no idea that the Satanic Panic carried so far that it was actually made illegal in certain places.
It wasn't, but I was 12.
Gotcha.
I thought it was. It's because it was all over the news. It was all over everything. So, and then it was like nobody talked about it again. So it was like, oh, they outlawed it because when you're 12, you believe that sort of stuff.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, honestly, like, on one hand, it's unbelievable that it possibly could be, but on the other hand, I also grew up in the American South, and you hear about, like, this radio station in Alabama banned the song "I Want to Break Free" by Queen because in the music video they're in drag. So it's a toss up whether or not that could have happened somewhere, but I'm glad that East Texas did not at some point actually ban Dungeons and Dragons.
If you ever get a chance to, just for I guess kind of history's sake, find a copy of Patricia Pulling's book. She was one of the heads of Bothered About Dungeons and Dragons, and she wrote a book called The Devil's Web. And I finally picked up a copy a couple of years ago, and I think the publisher was based out of my hometown.
Gotcha.
So it was. I was in a way part of ground zero for the Satanic Panic, so it was all over where I was. So it was the devil.
Gotcha. So you are kind of associated with a lot of different games as far as your channels go. I believe a lot of people are most familiar with your Call of Cthulhu and your cyberpunk content. But if you had to pick a favorite game or favorite game system, what would you say that is?
Call of Cthulhu 7th edition.
Gotcha. Cool.
It was a gloriously clean mechanic. I like it a lot.
It's honestly cool that we're having you on specifically at this time because we're only a couple weeks removed from. I did a huge overview of the history of Chaosium with Stu Horvath from Vintage RPG and Unwinnable.com. So we've recently talked about Call of Cthulhu and all the various Chaosium properties. So it's cool to have someone else on here who's huge into Chaosium games as well.
Oh. Well, I've never played most of their other games. Call of Cthulhu is very clearly their flagship.
Yep.
But like I've never tried Pendragon, which a lot of people have been telling me to try. And I know they didn't write it, but now that John Wick is with them, I've always wanted to try Seventh Sea.
Mhm.
Even back in the old first edition when they had it, I was so deep into D&D at the time that by the time I pulled my head out of the sand to look around to see if what other games are out there, Seventh Sea was gone. So I want to pick that up and just check it out, see what it's all about.
Absolutely. Yeah, good pirate RPGs are hard to come by. Although there is a certain Savage World setting that I dare not mention that people love, but if I mention it, the savages are going to show up. I'm just kidding, guys. I love you. I love you all. So going back to those early days, that first game you were playing when you were 13 years old. Do you remember that first character?
Yes, his name was Pike. He was an elf. Now, because that was basic D&D, that would mean they were all fighter wizards. And my first game of Dungeons and Dragons, it came with this box set, and it's like up in my attic, I believe. Uh, had a scenario that you dungeon mastered yourself through. It was like a little choose your own adventure sort of thing with a fold out map. Um, and then when I found a dungeon master, we re-rolled the stats, but I just basically kept the same character. So I pulled him into which was first edition AD&D when I actually started playing with a group. So I only really ever played one game of that box set because it only had one. And then I joined a group and I learned really what all you could do with the game.
Gotcha. Now, Loopy and Elfie in chat are trying to get me in trouble here with the Savage Worlds crew, so yes, I now have to mention 50 Fathoms. There, I said it. You all happy now? 50 Fathoms. Savage Worlds. Alright, so a lot of these characters kind of come up. In fact, there may be one there may be an obvious answer here because he showed up in some of your videos, but those of us who GM a lot, we have this tendency to bring in NPCs in multiple different settings. So do you have a forever NPC that you like to bring into all of your games?
I've had a few that would run through like several campaigns and then kind of got dropped, partially because I either got tired of it or as the group changed, like nobody could remember what the original guy was. Like my first real D&D campaign that like went all the way to a big thrilling end with the big evil bad guy, and they meet the big evil bad guy at the end that they've been questing to find. He was Childus the Conqueror. Well, he would show up in other games after that, but it was always Childus the something else, like the bartender. And whenever they meet him, he would throw out the same voice and a lot of the same little turbs, but he's just this completely reimagining of this guy that in another reality was like a Genghis Khan, and now he's the bartender in like just nowhere random village. For a long time, we always would have an NPC pop up that was named Trejo. That was just pretty much Danny Trejo. And he was a very beloved NPC that just Bob is like, and it's Danny Trejo. Like, well, what's he like? He's Danny Trejo. And but he is in this particular backdrop. The bone saw that I've mentioned before has popped up again after he was a magical sword. So I've had a few, but Not an incredible number of them in a while.
Gotcha. Now for Trejo, because it's Danny Trejo, did he always meet some kind of grisly end?
If they befriended him, God, I think he did. Well, I think there was one. We did a campaign. It was actually one of my best two campaigns ever, and it was they were kids in the cyberpunk universe. So in Night City, they were. It's called a juvie gang. So we started the campaign off with them being 12 years old, and Trejo is this like local fixer guy. He was usually really nice to the kids. I think he survived. It's just the campaign kind of when it went off and they kind of left being the little gutter rats. They kind of left Trejo behind. So he's probably evidently still kind of scuttling around that part of Night City now.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Well, it's good that Danny Trejo doesn't always die.
Yeah.
At least at Seth Skorkowsky stable.
Well, if he's a good guy, that I don't know if you've heard that. Danny Trejo has that rule that if he plays a bad guy, he has to die. But if he's a good guy, he can live. He just plays a good guy once every 80, 90 movies.
Yep. Now, when it comes to behind the screen and as a player, we all have different ways that we like to enjoy this game. We all kind of develop our own style. So, how would you describe your play style, both as a GM and as a player?
Um, as a game master, it's kind of odd. I enjoy doing a lot of odd gimmicky stuff from time to time. I'll sometimes do like a video just talking about like, hey, here's a cool little gag that you can do like once every 3 years and get away with. So I usually try to keep my players entertained with something new uh, pretty regularly. And that's also led to some of the reasons why we've played so many different systems, is I always want to have them experience something new or have us do something just kind of new and exciting together. So it's either a new game or some new little gimmick to make one game just more fun, like hand puppets or something like that they might have to talk to. Um, as a player, I am when you categorize the different types of players, I'm what's called a tactical player, and I think it comes from the fact that I grew up playing old school D&D, which was still really based off of the kind of the tactical rules of the old days. So I am all about puzzles and figuring out how to get the maximum amount of efficiency or a creative way to use a spell or something like that. So I do a lot of problem solving when I play. I also have a very dirty, horrible tendency to become the murder hobo. Um, and the reason for that, as I've had to explain while I'm on trial, is that since I primarily game master, my job is to die. I play all the orcs, we all die. I play all the villains, they all die. I play all the gangers, they all die. When I'm a player, I get to kill. So it's such an exciting thing for me. Like I get to be effective. Normally it's like I wanna beat them up, but I don't want to accidentally overdo it and total party kill them. Like I can't just like open up both barrels and just like go to town. So I have a dirty tendency that when I play, I'm all like, just cut to the action, guys. That's literally all I want, because that's the one thing I can't do when I GM.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there always seems to be two kind of modes for forever GMs when they finally get the chance to get on the other side of the screen. One is and this is what I do. I kind of fall into the niche of my comfort character. I like my martial characters, and so I go, all right, here's my chance to swing a sword and kill a bunch of things. And then there's the ones who just kind of let their id go crazy. It sounds like you might be more in that particular side of things.
I enjoy it now, but the other thing is like whenever I've been able to play Call of Cthulhu, I have never once survived a game of Call of Cthulhu. I have been the only person to die in games before, so I evidently don't have the issue that I'm afraid to have my character die, because I've had up to 1,000 NPCs die on me, and I always know that, like, well, I've got a million characters in my head, so if this one goes out in a blaze of glory, then that's fine. So I don't get super duper attached whenever I do get to play a character, just because anytime I have, then it ends up that that person stops running me and I'm back to being a forever GM. So
Mhm.
just, you know, I don't mind being the sacrificial lamb if a GM's going to run me.
Mhm.
I just
Elfie
want
in chat says you are the red shirt.
I just want to at least kill something before I go.
Yep. So this is kind of a difficult question for people who, put so much time and energy into this hobby, but people who do so have a lot of great memories tied up with gaming. So, Seth, if you had to pick a fondest RPG memory, what would that be?
Damn. There was a group that I did belong with. Man, now I'm thinking of more, but I'm going to go with my first one because that was my first one. In about it was 2001 that we were playing, because it was like right around the time 9/11 happened, and we were playing Cyberpunk 2020. It was set in Dallas, which is where we were at the time. It was with just a lot of old friends, and uh, we were young, and a lot of us had been former delinquents ourselves, and I really do cherish those games, and I've really enjoyed watching the people that we played with in that group, that I've kept track of, seeing how they've gone. A lot of them into the tech industry and stuff. So uh, those are the few games that I look back at, and even though I guess we actually didn't play too many sessions, I remember them so clearly that it feels like we played for years.
Mhm.
But we probably only had about half a dozen sessions with these characters. But I can remember just about every single detail almost 20 years later.
Gotcha. Was there anything like in particular that just made that time stick out in your head? Was it just like the right people at the right time to, create magic at the table?
It was. I was 22 or so, and we were just a lot of just factors in our life, and everything came together. It was just this perfect mix. I couldn't even tell you how to recreate that, but
Hmm.
it was a lot of fun.
Gotcha. Well, unfortunately, we now have to sink the ship a little bit because for every good memory we have, there are also some bad memories. We play with a lot of different people. Sometimes we get that perfect combination like you had with that group in 2001. But sometimes we just don't mesh with the people that we play with. And for the worst offenders at our tables, we have this term of that guy. So, Seth, if you have a that guy story that you're comfortable sharing on the show, please do so.
Oh, well, I've got a few, and some of them are more spectacular than others, but I'll tell you the king of them for me, just because of the long term impact that he had. Uh, I had one player, and I had actually played with him for some years. He was a friend of mine, and his thing was, when he was on, he was absolutely on. Like, he was amazing. He was a great role player when he was on point. The problem is, the gross majority of the time he wasn't on point, and at those times he was kind of the nightmare player, constantly distracted. Just he would never remember any rules, no matter how many times we reminded him. He would get angry at weird things, that you'd get really hostile about stuff, and half the time none of us had any idea what it was. But eventually he had one game where he was so distracted and getting so ticked off about stuff that I ended up having to boot him from the game. And that hit me so hard having to kick this guy out because he was making everybody else miserable. And I found out another player was planning on leaving for it. My wife was in the groups like, I am never playing with him again. That about a week after I finally pulled the cord on that, we've been playing together for about 6 years. I did something I'd never done before, and I set a camera up and I recorded a video called the RPG Social Contract as my way to kind of work through what had just happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I had a player that was so bad, he launched my entire YouTube channel. So I have industry awards for a channel all because I had one nightmare session that was one of those like I ended that one wondering if like should I stop running, like am I done running or do I just need to get rid of them. So that was my I guess the most impactful bad player that I've had.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah, and if I can just mention one from the videos that you've done, the player who was basically pitting you and his other GM against each other as like idols of the perfect GM. That's some psychological warfare right there, and that definitely I was like, oh, that's that guy.
What's funny is when that video went live, it by sheer coincidence, I had already been planning on putting together this video. He and his wife scheduled to have a dinner with us like the next day. So the next day, I'm sitting in a restaurant with him, and he goes off to the bathroom, and his wife is like, he was really sorry about what happened way back then. And I'm like, it's 20 years ago. Yeah, it's no big deal. It's like he came back to it, and we had a lot of laughs about it because he's like, I was such a I was everything you said was absolutely right, but he had forwarded off to the other GM, a guy named Jeff, and Jeff got a kick out of it too. So, but that guy, we don't play together, but we did get to have a good laugh about this incident that happened in like 99 and 2000. I mean, it wasn't like it was recent when I gave that story. It was a very, very long time ago.
Hmm. Yeah, that I think that might have been the first video of yours that I saw was that particular story, and I was just like, oh my god.
I had given that story evidently to several people at conventions. Like the comments, people were like, I met you at Gen Con, and somehow this story came up. So it was something I told to a few people whenever they would, I guess a lot of times lament about their players wishing their game was like Critical Role or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so it kind of became my thing of like, they don't understand what it is they have because they're so busy looking at this idealized thing. So I'd always tell the story of my buddy. And so finally one day I was like, I'm just going to record this thing because I think I can make this a funny video. So, but it's, I don't know, I think it is kind of handy for a lot of, especially newer GMs that are so unsure of themselves, and they hear all this praise for, these other GMs, or somebody played with them before, or they're just somebody that's got a channel that's really popular. So
Mm-hmm.
hopefully that helps somebody. Like that'd be the goal.
My first GM and my good friend Muhammad, he at one point was toying with the idea of putting out this like black and white PSA with like Sarah McLachlan music in the background, where it's just a bunch of people sitting behind GM screens and they'd like do a deep sigh and go, I'm not Matt Mercer. And then it cuts to someone else, I'm not Matt Mercer. And then it cuts to him and he goes, and you're not Matt Mercer. And then you just give a speech. None of us are Matt Mercer, and that doesn't make your game any better or worse for it. So remember, you're not Matt Mercer. Then just go back around to everyone, you're not Matt Mercer.
You should do it.
Yeah, I wondered why he never pulled the trigger on it. Muhammad, if you're listening to this right now, as I know you catch up on the show sometimes, definitely do it. Let's do it. Let's put that out there.
Oh, the thing is, like, you've got enough GMs that you've talked to that it'd be very easy to bring in some guests for that one.
Oh yeah,
So
definitely.
if he wants it, hit me up. I can give a 5 second. I'm not Matt Mercer. I don't mind.
Absolutely. And it looks like, let's see, what's that name here? Popper Knot in chat wants to say that he loves your videos and he finds your advice wildly helpful as a new GM. So thank you for that. I also find your
Good.
advice wildly helpful.
Oh, good. That's the goal. My goal is if I can't be helpful, I can at least be entertaining. So if somebody spends their time watching a video, if I don't say anything, it helps them. At least maybe they'll get a chuckle. But hopefully it helps them. So I'm glad to know it has.
Absolutely. And also, thank you. I believe that is Vanta Blacklord in chat for the follow. Doc Holiday to you, as popped up while we were having that discussion there. So Seth, we've got one last introductory question here. This one has thrown some people for a loop. The answer to this question can be as philosophical or sophomoric as you want it to be.
Okay, I'll probably do that.
But
I'm good at sophomore.
if you could put anything on a T-shirt, what would it be?
Anything on a T-shirt? Well, damn. I don't know. I have T-shirts. Crap. Now we're just sitting here with dead air as I go through all the possibilities. If we were sitting around at a bar, I'd give you like 90 in a row. If I could have anything on a T-shirt, because I'm trying to like at least relate it to the subject at hand, I would. And I don't know why I've never made one. This is actually kind of a weird thing. I would have a logo that's the Blazing Sun, and that originally came from a random D&D game like in 1998 of a group of idiot mercenaries, and it became this running joke for so many years that it in Ren fairs, which I was very active in, we ended up forming a clan that was called the Blazing Suns, that we would have like 60 people come and camp out together. And there are Blazing Sun tattoos, and there are uh, all sorts of Blazing Sun swag that got made. And I have never, ever owned a Blazing Sun t shirt. And I just realized that is the biggest hole in my entire t-shirt inventory is I don't have one. In fact, if you watch some of my videos, there are Blazing Suns that I slip in there as as odes to our Ren Fair group, which all came from a D&D game. And then we did another campaign where they were Blazing Suns. So that's it. It would be a total inside joke that nobody but us would ever get.
Oh, good. Those are the best ones sometimes. Especially when people then start picking those up. Like if you were at a convention and you had a stack of Blazing Sun t-shirts at the table, someone would buy it because it looks cool. And then you'd have someone out there who has no idea what it is, just wearing it around.
I've actually been meaning to make a video talking about the Brotherhood of the Blazing Suns because of how one random comment that a GM makes, because it was how are they dressed, like and I described these guys, literally became this big thing, and now there are we've got people that are in the Blazing Sun group that have now moved across the world and, like I said, have tattooed themselves with this. And it was literally something that when I was 19, I just pulled out of my butt in a panic. It has ended up becoming an institution. So I need to do a video on that. I just don't know how to make it as entertaining as I would like it to be.
Gotcha. Maybe you could have Todd show up with a blazing tattoo.
I could do that. I could do that.
Hey guys, check out my new tattoo.
Well, I'll probably have to ask the people that have them, like, can you send me photographs? I actually want to show pictures of these things, because like this is weird that that people were like, yeah, I'm so in this group. And it's like it's all based off of a weird joke from a game.
Gotcha. So now that we're through these introductory questions, since I brought them up, I just need to ask, I know that they have stood in for multiple people, including real people, as we mentioned earlier. But when it comes to Todd, Mike, and Dweebles, do their personalities come from specific people, or are these amalgam characters?
They're total amalgams.
Gotcha.
I for a while I didn't even give them names. They were just I just needed a character to interact with to show off some example skit. And the first one was Todd, and at the time I had like really long hair, so I just flipped a baseball cap backwards, let my hair down, and put on an old Ramones shirt. And uh, I intentionally didn't name them any names of anybody that I have played with.
Gotcha.
That way, somebody that I might have played with like 15 years ago named Todd, be all like, I can't believe you did that. But so that was a thing. In fact, the name Todd, there was a meme that was going around for a while of like some sign in front of some like kind of shady looking club. It said like Lightsaber Night is canceled tonight. Thanks, Todd. And and I saw this on Facebook one day. I was like, that's it. That's the name. So thanks, Todd. Just sounded so perfect because I was always using him as my example of bad behavior. So so if you ever see that meme one day while scrolling, that's what it inspired in me.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I was also wondering if Todd always being the bad player was original authorial intent, or if that just kind of happened out of nowhere. But it sounds like he just kind of evolved as your example bad player.
Yeah, and it's like if I had several videos after I introduced him where it would like I would only use him, and then like one day I realized like, oh, I need him to interact with somebody else. So like I kind of threw together these other outfits. And had I realized at that time that I was kind of committing for the rest of my life to these characters, I would have done Dweebles absolutely differently, because I have to do this comb over that requires like all the gel in the world to get my hair to like swoop down, because I wanted to make it really awful, and it is. But so it's like I always have to start with Dweebles because I have to get out of the shower and put half a pound of gel in my hair, and then after Dweebles I like change the camera around and I pull the mic cap over it and then swap the goatee out for a mustache, which that was actually a pair that I bought at Party City.
Gotcha.
And then I switched the camera around and put on a wig and I play Todd, because once I cut my hair off, I had to steal one of my wife's old wigs in order to keep that character going. So, yeah, but they're not based on anybody. I have had a very weird player, like really weird, who had a goatee, and a lot of people that have played with me have said like, I know that's Dweebles, right? I know it's Dweebles. And I'm like, no, it's not. And they're like, yeah, whatever. I know you can't say it, but I know it's Dweebles. Like, no, it's not Dweebles. The Dweebles voice that like, hey guys, what are we doing? It's they're all bad impressions. Every one of those voices. On Robot Chicken, there's kind of like the nerdy guy, and I think Macaulay Culkin does that voice of like, exactly, this is what we're gonna do. That is my really bad impersonation of Macaulay Culkin's nerd voice. So that's where that came from. I just happen to have a really big oversized goatee that a kitten used to steal and tear up, and I never bothered replacing it. So like the reason that goatee looks even worse is because it was a kitten's chew toy that I just put double-sided tape on, slap on my face. So now you'll think about that next time you see Dweebles.
Yeah, absolutely. And as the owner of two cats myself, that there's not much you can stop them from turning into a chew toy if they put their mind to it.
Yeah, I try to keep my game room like the door shut whenever have everything set up for recording. And you're like freaking ninjas, man. Like, she would get inside, somehow get on the top of the table and find that thing and get it out of the room all in under about 1/10 of a second. So like I don't even know how she could do that, but then I'd find it like in the dining room, like, oh damn, my goatee. Yeah, like brush it off. And Light's like, man, it's still good. And, but so she did that like 4 or 5 times. So that thing is like really mangled and has like this, you could probably count the rings of all the double-sided tape that I've put on the back that's actually kind of holding it together at this point. I think they were meant to be worn once, and I've gotten about 3 years out of it. So I've definitely got
Nice.
my money's worth.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, my big guy back here, Ronan, he likes to play Godzilla with my miniatures.
Oh, Ronan is playing a dangerous game.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is. Fortunately, he only goes after the ones that are just primed, so it's fine. But I'm afraid
Is
one
it?
of these days he's
Is
going to
it
get one of the
really?
painted ones.
Yeah, thankfully none of my cats have ever gone after my miniatures. They will steal dice like nobody's business,
Yep.
and yeah, we've had a lot of tile floors, so occasionally I'll hear this like that very distinct clack clack of dice getting launched across the tile floor. It's like, how the hell did they find that? And then sometimes they'll have a die that you're like, I haven't seen that die in like a year. Yeah, where the hell was that?
Yep.
So
You don't want to know. So you've already discussed kind of how the channel came about. What with the frustrations of playing one night, launching this RPG social contract video, which is kind of frequently referenced and in a lot of ways seems to be kind of the backbone of your philosophy when it comes to GM player interaction and the videos that you make on that. What happened after that video that made you go, I want to keep doing this, and I want to put all of this time and energy into this thing that I made out of pure rage and spite?
wonderful description. I had intended to make a YouTube video or channel for a couple of years when my first novel came out. I was talking to we call him a friend. He's a guy that I know who's very big into internet marketing. He owns an internet marketing company, and he told me that I needed to get a YouTube channel because it's the second largest search engine, and that would really get me out there. And I'm like, what the hell would I make a channel about? And he's like, well, make it about writing. It's like, well, I mean, I've got a book out. Like, there's a lot, there's people out there that have got channels like Brandon Sanderson, who's written 6 books in the amount of time that you and I have been talking today.
Yeah.
So, I can't, there's a lot of people out there that are better at that, and they're more educated in the sense that they can break it down in ways that I can't. So I spent about 2 years, a little over 2 years, wanting to do a YouTube channel and having no idea what I could possibly go on and on about. So when I made that first video, and it was terrible, I did not know how to edit. I had the world's worst camera with its world's worst onboard microphone. It was done in like one 30-minute take where I had like a post-it note with some notes on it. It has since been retired and kind of redone much cleaner. But once I had gone through the whole process of setting it up and learning how to upload a video on YouTube and all that, it suddenly became a lot easier. Like all these little ideas of different stuff that I would want to do started coming to me. So the channel picked up very, very quickly once I figured out something that I was at least passionate about to make videos for. And the other thing that was lucky, I had actually left my day job several months before then to write full time. So I had all the time in the world. I was writing my novel Ashes of Onyx, and you don't want to spend your entire day doing that. And I'd already done all the stuff around the house. When you say, it's like, man, when I finally get to quit my job, I'm gonna redo all these little things around my house. So that was 2 months, and I was done. So I was kind of also in the mood to like look for something to help occupy my time, and so it just kind of worked out.
Gotcha. So the novels came first, or the novel came first, and then from there, you kind of discovered the YouTube thing.
Yeah. And the reason I named my channel Seth Skorkowsky is it was supposed to help, I guess, market my name for the novel recognition. And
Mhm.
so instead of being a novelist that has a YouTube channel, it's kind of grown to the fact I'm a YouTuber that's also a novelist. So
Gotcha.
it's kind of crested past it.
Gotcha. Yeah, because I mean, so many YouTubers. I mean, the prime example I can think of is Shadiversity, who does the medieval weapons YouTube videos. He started as a YouTuber and just recently released a novel. So, for some reason, I find people on YouTube and think, they did this first because I grew up in a world where you can be a professional YouTuber and not blink an eye at those words.
I always find it really weird whenever I'm like, I'm like going to a doctor's office or something, or I'm filling out some survey. I was like, what is your profession? I'm like, author and YouTuber. Like I am a professional creative hobo. It's like it's a lot easier back when I could say it's like, oh, I work at this place, but I've been self-employed, so I just have to embrace it.
Hmm. Yeah, it's like I'm a denizen of Music City, so around here there's a lot of people with the profession of songwriter, which for most people means waitress, but for some people does actually mean songwriter. And so there was one time this couple that my wife and I met, and we're newlyweds. We've been married for less than 2 years. It'll be 2 years in March. But every now and then we just kind of get discouraged about are we ever going to own a home, are we ever going to feel financially secure. So we went over to this couple's house, and he's a freelance web designer and she is a singer songwriter. And as soon as those two pieces of information came out, I looked at her and I was like, we'll be able to own a home one day. We can do it. It's all right. If they can do it, we can do it.
Hey, that's if that's what you need, man. If that's the motivation, then absolutely go for it.
Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So one thing that I personally am just very interested in is the writing side of things, because as I told you before we went on, I am currently in the middle of my first attempt at writing a fantasy novel. So how did that process begin for you? How did you start that journey?
Oh God, I don't know if we have enough time. I my first novel I started writing in 2004, I believe, and the it was a fantasy novel. I finished it. It took me 2 years to finish it, and I started on the sequel, and I was going through the whole process of trying to sell it. Uh, Went to my first agent editor conference pitching it, got rejected God knows how many times. Um, but I started because I had graduated college and I had moved away from my friends, like not far, but I had moved like 30 minutes away. So it wasn't like we could just hang out every single night like we had before and that sort of thing. So I was alone a lot. Um, but it took, uh, so then I guess 2011, I ended up meeting with an agent or an editor who pretty much told me that my first novel was unsellable crap, but it taught me how to write.
Mhm.
And he delivered it in a way that I was all like, "Well, great!" And then the next week, I started another story that had been bouncing around in my head for several years, and that was Dameron, and that ended up being my first published novel in 2014. I did have a few short stories that I sold starting in 2008 when those started. I had my first two short stories published in the same month. So I did a few short fiction sales, but it was about 10 years from when I said I am going to write a book to when my book was released. And it was a completely different book than the one I had originally said I was going to write. I've got 1 and 75% of a second book that's in a drawer now that I would be afraid to look at because I as much as I have grown as a writer, I would really don't want to see what badness I did
Mhm.
in those early days.
Well, yeah, I mean that's got to feel like when you stumble upon something you like made in first grade, and you're just like, how did I pass that first grade? I see some of the stuff. I had terrible handwriting as a kid, but my mom will occasionally like send a picture of something. It's like Ryan made this when he was 6, and I was like, I was 6 when I made that.
So it was a very long journey, but it was fun, and it started as something that I did to pass a lot of time and get a lot of my kind of creativity out. So
Hmm. Gotcha. Now, this is kind of a two pronged question, in that it's two questions I've duct taped together. But when it comes to writing fantasy, how, if at all, do you think, GMing and running role playing games has helped you? And then on the reverse side, do you think that being an author has had any effect, either positive or negative, on your games?
um, I would say that it has helped me, but probably not in the way a lot of people would expect. When when you get really proficient in writing, you do pay attention to a lot of stuff that can build a mood. And one of the things I've talked about a lot is whenever you're doing a scene, especially a horror scene or something, if you want to put them really there, it is not describe what they see and don't necessarily describe as much what they hear. Those are the two main senses we rely on. But always throw in a third sense, and smell is the one that's actually the most emotional sense. So whenever I would describe scenes in games, I became much more aware that I should describe all five senses. And with writing, the kind of rule of thumb that I've used is every scene you do must use at minimum three senses, and preferably four. And if you can slip it in without it being too busy, try to get five. But four should be your dead on target, and three should be your minimum. So it has helped me in that sense. But as far as writing the adventures or any of that, no, I was already doing that. That's what caused me to want to become an author in the first place. Um, in the ways that it has hurt me is I had a period where, and a lot of people say like, oh, is writing a game like writing a book? No, it is absolutely not. But uh, that one of the big game master sins that you can do is try to turn your game into a book where you are essentially railroading or forcing your players into some sort of narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So when I really got into writing, I unintentionally started doing that in some of my games until it was like really called out on me. I was like, oh crap, I hadn't even realized I was doing that. So that's pretty much the only negative effect. So writing a game and writing a book are very different universes. The only similarity they have is they're creative and you use English words when
Mm-hmm.
you're doing it. That's about it. So hopefully that answers it.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I've always heard the kind of meme on the internet of if the GM says I'm writing a fantasy novel, you might want to find a new game.
I also originally had one game that was set in the same world that my novel series was set place in. And that I ended up having to like abort it. Like I intentionally, like, they found a portal and they ended up taking their pirate ship into the Underdark, and they sailed through the sunken seas of the Underdark to get as far away from my world as possible, because it was actually really difficult to try to write a novel and do a completely like unrelated game in the same world, because you want a game to kind of escape.
Yeah.
And I realized that I was constantly in this world that writing, when I decided to take it seriously, I had to treat it like a second job. And I realized the game was suffering for it and all that. So I was like, no, screw this. We're going to the Underdark. Yeah, we're taking a pirate ship with us. So Yeah, those were a couple hurdles I had early on that where you don't realize that you're making a big mistake until you did it and somebody points it out and you feel like a jerk.
Mhm. Yeah, I mean that's got to feel like setting a game in like your office.
Yeah, yeah. Though I've always wanted to do like a game of like cyberpunk or something, and like on a boardroom table, like on a glass boardroom table in some skyscraper overlooking a city. Like that is like
Oh yeah.
a dream game that I've wanted to run since I was 18. Uh, but it wouldn't be my office. It'd be somebody else's. If you were true to the game, you wouldn't ask permission, but because I'm a coward, I would.
Mhm. Yeah, back when I was in an office building on a regular basis, there's a room that springs to mind right now, and Loopy and Chat, uh, we worked at the same place, so you probably know exactly the room I'm thinking of. But that would be a great room to run Cyberpunk in. It's got a view of downtown Nashville. It's all high tech. It's got these weird cameras set up that like follow you as you're moving.
Oh
Cause
hell
it's
yeah!
yeah, oh yeah.
Oh hell yes! Do it.
I think my badge still works.
I mean, if y'all show up wearing suits, if the night watchman, like you look legit. So I don't know if you ever heard about that. The urban explorers that would like go out and like explore abandoned subway tunnels and stuff. One of the secrets that they use is they wear business wear because
Gotcha.
if somebody's wandering around a construction yard or stuff that places you always wanted to check out but you're kind of afraid to, when these people would do it, they'd put on business wear because when somebody sees you, you're wearing a suit, you can't possibly be up to no good. You got a good reason to be there. And they'd have like briefcases that I don't know if they're full of flashlights or cameras or what, but they'd like be in full business wear, breaking into a construction yard or. I read about that in like the early 2000s. I always wanted to do it, but I'm a coward.
Oh, that's fantastic. I love it. My wife is into exploring abandoned places and stuff like that. We might have to give that a whirl.
I accidentally broke into a Dallas abandoned skyscraper from the basement. That's a long story, and I didn't even know how I got in there. There's a, I think they've closed them since. There was like an underground mall, for the lack of a better word, of like tunnels connecting all the major buildings around Dallas.
Hmm.
And I was there with a friend, and there was like we're going down this long hallway under a road, and it's all carpeted and tiled. It's all nice, and I just kind of randomly checked a door. It had opened, and I was all like, "Well, hey, hey," and we went in because it was unlocked, and we went up the stairs and we popped out, and there's like dirty abandoned building lobby, and there's like the glass doors, and I could see people walking along the sidewalk, and my friend and I were like, well, hell, we did it, so let's just go up a couple flights. But that was never planned. That was just random door of like, I wonder if it opens, and then I'm in like a Neil Gaiman movie or something. So
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah, my grandpa once accidentally slash on purpose broke into Cape Canaveral. They couldn't get in the main gate. They turned him away at the main gate, so he went down the road, turned on like a dirt road, and kept turning, ended up behind the main gate at some point, and the Air Force guys who were there, with their hands on their sidearms, were like, "How did you get in here?" They're like, "This road, turn on this road, and this road, and this road. There's no security or anything like that. You guys might want to do something about that."
it's like those hackers that like break into the Pentagon or something, and then they get a job. It's like this is how I did it. Give me a job.
Absolutely. Yeah. Now, one game, actually it's an entire genre. I've always been so curious about cyberpunk as a genre. I've never been able to play any kind of cyberpunk game though, just because I'm the only one who wants to play it apparently. So when
There's
it
a
comes
lot
to
of people right now wanting to play it, man.
yeah.
You'll find a group.
Well, yeah, especially with that game that may never come out.
Well, the tabletop one's coming out like this week. I think it comes out in like 7 days.
Gotcha.
And it's done. I have it on really good authority. that I'm not allowed to talk about of exactly what that PDF looks like. So it's fully done.
Good.
So the video game, I don't know. I've been waiting for that video game since the late 90s. I can wait a couple more months.
If nothing else, I have the Shadowrun RPGs that I got for free. Thank you, Epic. But when it comes to, what makes a good cyberpunk game and then what makes a crap cyberpunk game, I know this might be a very kind of lengthy discussion, but what are a few things that could make or break a cyberpunk game for, anyone who's newly looking at running or playing in that particular sandbox?
Um, so when with cyberpunk, and my major experience was the cyberpunk 2020 going back to 1996, is that what makes a good cyberpunk game is it is attitude. And one of the things that it took me so long to really fully wrap my head around and appreciate, and I think Mike Pondsmith is a prophetic genius, because he talked about in the book, the future is disposable. Everything is disposable, and it should be treated that way. And I never really appreciated how true that was until we started entering the world of the 20 teens, and you could see how, we would get a cell phone that's got like this a computer that's more powerful than what my desktop had 10 years before, and like we crack the screen and get rid of it and throw it out, and it's just like everything becomes consumerism.
Yeah.
So cyberpunk is about attitude, but everything's disposable, including you. It is a hyper violent game, and you cannot play it like you would Dungeons and Dragons, where there's this kind of assumed I'm going to get through this alive, and then they will lay hands on me and I will get back up and I'll be at full and I'll go kill a bunch of orcs. And cyberpunk, it could be like the fight starts and you die, and that was it. So you had to actually start playing very strategically, and that for me really made the game, as it really it was very gritty and very just raw. What can break a game of cyberpunk is there's two things. One, equipment whoring. This is a problem that you'll find in a lot of sci-fi games where because there is just so much really cool equipment. It's like the magic items that you would find in a fantasy game, except for you can order them on Amazon, and have them delivered to your door. So players that get so into shopping for equipment that like they forget to play the game, or they don't interact with everybody because they're sitting there scrolling or flipping through a gear guide because they want to find the best widget to do the job. That's an obstacle that you will find in any sci-fi game. The first time I encountered that was Cyberpunk, where it would be occasionally like, dude, put down the Chromebook, let's play. The other one is with the net, or with hackers. And you know how in like a Dungeons and Dragons game, when you've got the whole group and they're in a town and you got like 6 players, and there's that one thief who wants to go around breaking into buildings. So you're like, okay, we'll do a short little solo as you break into a building or two. And then that thief kind of like, that player dominates it. And you got 5 other players that are kind of sitting there like, we really have nothing to do until the thief finishes doing this thing. And then we can go off on our adventure. And they're kind of watching this person do it. Hackers in a lot of cyberpunk games, especially Cyberpunk 2020, that was a problem of, they want to do their cool net running stuff, but now the game master has to essentially run 2 completely separate games. And in that one, they really are 2 separate games. Like they're almost like 2 different systems, and they're in different universes. So that could kill a game. If your group started splitting up that way, because if they split up physically and go to different sides of town, it's really easy to bring them back together. But when they literally leave this plane of existence to the digital universe, it's suddenly a lot harder to try to get them back together and keep that game going, but still give enough internet stuff to the guy that wanted to play the hacker, and still give enough meat world stuff to the rest of your players. So I'd say that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's always going to be that one guy who was really into Lawnmower Man.
Wow, that's a blast from the past movie. God, I can't remember the last time I saw that. I was like in high school,
Pierce
middle school.
Brosnan.
Oh, wow.
I think pre-Bond Pierce Brosnan too.
It would have to be.
Yeah.
They wouldn't have been able to afford him after Bond came
Hmm.
out. So yeah, I think I had to have been middle school. I saw my buddy Aaron. So yeah. Now I feel old. Thanks.
I shouldn't tell you how old I am. I've already alluded to it. No, I'm not going to do that. I can't do that to you.
I am ancient, sir. Don't worry. I understand my status.
I'll be 25 in a month. So,
My God. And you're
sorry.
married. You've been married for 2 years?
Yep.
Wow.
2 years in March.
Wow, damn. I was 25. I still had no idea what I wanted to be when I grew up. I think it's about the age I started writing. So
Gotcha.
I think I was beginning to figure out what I wanted to be when I grew up.
And I mean, like for me right now, this is really when I'm starting my writing too. I recently found out. I've always been interested in fantasy, and I love Dungeons and Dragons, and I love creating games and stuff. But I recently decided that I really want to write because I found out I'm actually related to Robert E. Howard.
Okay.
I always wondered just because my last name's Howard as well. And so I was thinking, am I related to him? I did the whole Ancestry.com thing. Turns out he's my fifth cousin.
Oh, well, that's better than me. You do know that they actually have what's called Robert E. Howard Days down at Cross Plains, Texas every year.
Yeah, I've reached out to the Robert E. Howard Society, and when that happens again, I'll be there. Because, and thankfully, I am not the only Howard that has reached out to them. They told me I was the most distant Howard that had reached out, and I was like, okay, at least someone is involved.
Well, if nothing else, you get to meet a bunch of cousins you never knew about.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's kind of a weird way to network. But this year, I was supposed to be my first year that I finally made it to Robert E. Howard Days, because Cross Plains is not too terribly far from me, because it's about, I think, about 2 hours, but in southern distance, that's nothing. And then COVID happened.
Yeah.
So hopefully next year I will finally be able to make it there, because I've friends that have come from different parts of the country to it, and they're like, I was expecting you to be there, and it's like, oh, is that this weekend? Damn, that's like the sixth year in a row. I should write that down on my calendar. So hopefully I'll remember next year.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's definitely an event I want to get to, but I mean, yeah, the D&D has been a very big inspiration on my games. I've kind of done the thing where I've run people in a world that I want to use. Basically, what I've done is I use them to like build pieces of the world, and then I look at what they did, think about what I've got there, and try to port it over to what I'm working on. But it's cool to talk to someone who also kind of was inspired to write by the gaming that you've done, and so it's always cool to hear people talk about this, and guys like you, and then guys like my good friend Tim Matthias who have done the same thing. It's always great to connect and talk about stuff like that. So thank you for allowing me to do that here this evening.
If if you can ever get to some of the different writing conventions, because you mentioned you've done like game conventions earlier, I think before the show, of like running at a con.
Mm-hmm.
Go to a writing convention, man. It is like a weird parallel universe, because I had done a lot of writing conventions before my first game con, and you end up in pretty much the exact same conversations, because in writing communities, especially with speculative fiction, the fantasy, sci-fi, and horror, massive tabletop community that goes back a long time, and a lot of them are really fun to talk to in kind of bouncing ideas, and also they'll be able to tell you some of the most unusual trivia about some of your favorite books, because the writing community is also very small. It's like the tabletop industry when you actually kind of got to pull up the carpet and look. It's actually very small, and just about everybody knows each other or is like 1 degree of separation from each other.
Mhm.
So definitely check that out, especially like once the panels shut down, the bar opens. That's choice, man. That's like my favorite part. So
Absolutely.
check one out.
The closest I've gotten is I did a few writing panels at Dragon Con one year.
I haven't made it to that one. That is so on my bucket list. Gotta want to do that one.
Dragon
No,
Con is a hell of a time. It
I'm very jealous of you, sir.
I did Dragon Con, so Dragon Con's very special for me. I did it for like 9 years in a row, starting when I was in middle school, and that's actually where I met my wife.
Oh, damn.
So,
So are you from Atlanta?
no, I'm from North Carolina,
Okay.
but Dragon Con was just like it was the biggest convention that was the closest to where I was, and so when I started going to conventions, it was actually my first con. My friends were like, "Hey, we're going to Dragon Con," which is like saying, "Hey, for the first time I'm going to the gym, I'm gonna go participate in Mr. Universe." But I
Well, that's a
tell
hell of a way to
people,
do it.
yeah, I tell people, don't let something like that be your first con. Other cons will not look the same. But that's what ended up happening. I loved it, and eventually I met my wife there. So
Well, well, hell. So now you two have to go back every single year when it's open again. So
absolutely.
that is awesome, man. I love that.
Yeah, so remember, people out there who are looking for that special someone, you can find love at a convention. You can look for love in Alderaan places.
My the first time I drug my wife to a con, we grew up doing Renaissance fairs, but for whatever reason she was intimidated with conventions because they were not the exact nerd culture that she had pretty much grown up doing.
Mhm.
And our first one, and it was a teeny little one in Dallas. Yeah, she's kind of like self-conscious, and this car pulls up behind us, and this couple gets out, and the guy is in his Starfleet uniform, and you can tell that like he is itching to go. He is so excited, and she comes out in like a Ren Fair costume, and you can tell that she is really unsure about this. Like I think it's pretty clear he talked her into it, and we're watching their body languages, and he shuts his door. He's like, "Set phasers to party," and then they went inside, and my wife is like, "Okay, no matter what happens, that guy is more awkward than me. I'm good. Let's do this." We had a lot of fun. But set phasers to party is something we say at every convention now.
Now, Ren Fairs is something that I am extremely interested in, partially because I have a fascination with blacksmithing, but also my wife and I, we did like a Lord of the Rings wedding. And so we have those outfits. That's what we wore. That's what we were married in. And I've wanted to do Ren Fairs for a while now, but yeah, that's again once things are happening again, that's definitely something I want to go to.
Oh, yeah. See, we started doing them. Well, she did before I did, but when I was like 16. And then throughout college, that was what my job was. And I very
Gotcha.
nearly ran off onto the Ren Fair circuit because there's actually a national circuit of Ren Fairs where the Rennies go from one to the other to the other.
Mhm.
And it was like right before my final semester of college, and I figured it would probably be best to stay at home and save money because I was about to be out of school. But that was our universe for so long, and we like deep behind the scenes, like with all the Rennies. So it was a blast. I wouldn't give that up, but I can't publicly talk about half those adventures. So
Now, when does your Ren Fair around you happen? Because the one around here happens in May, and in Tennessee, that just seems like criminal.
um, Texas has two big ones. It's got a couple others, but it's major one that's close to me is it's on the far side of Dallas, so it's a full hour drive. That's called Scarborough, and that starts at the very like last weekend of March.
Gotcha.
Um, up to the end of May. And then summer hits and nothing happens. And then Texas Renaissance Festival, that's down near Houston, begins at the very beginning of September and runs through Thanksgiving weekend, which means it is usually either scorching hot and you want to die, or it's freezing and raining. And there's like one weekend, and you never know which one, because it could be the first up to the last that is just absolutely perfect. But the rest of the time, it's either like death heat or like you're freezing and you're wearing wet tights. So, but that's the biggest one here. I think it might be the biggest in the country or the second largest in the country. It's huge, but that was always the big one that we would work back in college, is go to school and drive down to Houston, do the fair, drive back, go to school the next morning, and you did that for 2 months. So good times.
Gotcha. Yeah, because the Carolina Renaissance Festival, the one near where I grew up, it always happened October and November. So the weather in North Carolina that time, your highs are in the 70s at the very highest. Some days it's cold towards the end, but it's perfect. It's perfect for wearing what you're wearing during a Renaissance Festival. But in May in Tennessee, that seems criminal.
Little warm.
Yeah.
Basically, I was always happy if I could wear my cloak.
Yeah.
Or my doublet if I could put the sleeves on, because I have a doublet it's worn out. The color is almost gone, but the sleeves, when you attach them, are mint, and they don't even look like they should go together. And it's like, I bought those at the same time, but they don't even match, because I've worn the sleeves like 5-6 times ever. And the other one I wore the whole time I was working them for years. So like they've been worn hundreds of times, and they're just beaten up and nasty. But so if I can get to wear my full outfit, and especially a cloak, that's like perfect.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, typically what we do here kind of at the end of time, I like to turn over time to the guests to, plug anything they've got coming up, anything they want to push people towards. Obviously, you've got your channel, you've got your books. So anything you want to promote, anywhere you want to send people, go ahead. The floor is yours.
Oh, well, you can find me on YouTube at the highly imaginative name Seth Skorkowsky. Good luck spelling that. I also have several books out. My Valdekin series, Modern Day Monster Hunters, that is use magic weapons, including a sentient revolver. That is a 4-novel series. The audiobooks were narrated by R.C. Bray, 2 of which were Audio Award finalists. And then my most recent novel, Ashes of Onyx, is a urban fantasy, portal fantasy about sorceress, and goes a lot into addiction and the King in Yellow. And then I have a bunch of pulp sword and sorcery thief adventures with my Tales of the Black Raven series. So those are done in more of the 1930s pulp style, of a bunch of short stories compiled together, because Fritz Leiber was a massive influence on me. For tabletop gaming, my very first published scenario, A Mother's Love, was published in New Tales from the Miskatonic Valley for Call of Cthulhu, and that book won the ENnie Award in 2020. So my debut novel, or my debut scenario, has an ENnie winner. So if you play Call of Cthulhu or would like to, I have a adventure in Innsmouth you can check out. And that is, I think that's all I got to hawk right now.
Gotcha, absolutely. And the most recent video that Seth put out, I believe as of right now, is it's a video on cheating in RPGs, which is a topic that no one loves to cover, but one that unfortunately we do have to cover every now and then. Seth does a great job of it, if I do say so. So definitely check that out. Guys, that is going to do it for tonight's show. Seth, thank you once again for coming on. Thank you for, talking with us here this evening. And if you ever want to come back on, just let us know. And
I'd love to.
We'll be glad to have you back on. So just to let everyone know what's coming up, this Saturday we are back in the wonderful world of Baldur's Gate, just in time for breakfast, as Danishes and Dragons takes us back to Baldur's Gate. Now that we have Minsk and Boo in our party, we will see where things go. And this time next Monday, Hanker Infernal is coming back. He's requested that we talk about taco recipes, and I'm going to twist his arm into seeing if we can talk a little bit about Index Card 2nd Edition, since I now have that book. But fun times always abound when Hankerin shows up, and he's got a couple drinks in him. So we'll see where that goes. I am looking forward to that. And Elfie in chat here just has a question. For a show called Danishes and Dragons, where we prepare breakfast and talk about RPGs, do you have any breakfast recommendations?
Me?
Yeah, just...
Oh man, I'm a breakfast burrito guy. I'm not that terribly exciting.
All good. Gotcha. Cool. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining us this evening. And remember, whether you rolled a 1 or a 20, I'm so glad that you rolled your bones with me, Ryan Howard, and I'll see you next time.